Starlink cut off the Russians. The front line went blind. Russian soldiers attacked their own unit.
The connection was lost and a chain reaction began. While some units advanced on the front line, no support came from behind. Some requested fire support but received no response. Some changed positions but couldn't notify anyone. This is a type of disarray rarely seen on the battlefield. Because the problem here is not a lack of firepower or personnel, it is that everyone on the field was left alone at the same time. This disconnection was not accidental. The Starlink lines did not go down on their own. SpaceX implemented a whitelist system that only allowed authorized terminals to operate in the Ukrainian field. A significant portion of the terminals used by Russian forces in the field had been obtained on the gray and black markets. These devices were pushed off the network overnight, so what happened at the front was not a malfunction. It was a deliberate shutdown of access. The impact of this decision was felt simultaneously along the eastern and southern Ukrainian fronts. Information relayed from the 122nd Motorized Rifle Regiment near Kupiansk and the 1152nd Regiment in the Zaporizhzhia region indicates that the chain of command was effectively locked. The units were on the ground, but because the connecting lines were cut, everyone was confined to their own little bubble. In modern warfare, this is akin to fighting on the same front but in different time zones. The critical point here is that the Russian army is accustomed to civilian infrastructure in the field. Starlink provided fast and secure data transmission at the front. However, when this line was cut, it became apparent that there was no military-scale backup network ready to replace it. It was reported that backup channels were attempted to be activated, but Russian electronic warfare systems jammed even their own radios. In other words, not only was the main line cut off, alternative routes also failed to function effectively on the ground. The friendly fire incident in the Zaporizhzhia region was the harshest reflection of this disconnection on the ground. Units operating unaware of each other's positions opened fire without distinguishing who was in front of them, and an attack group of 12 soldiers was destroyed by their own fire. Such incidents are not unfortunate accidents. They are a structural consequence of communication breakdown. Because without information on the ground, intentions cannot be correctly interpreted. This move also emerged as a response to Russia's recent, more intensive use of Starlink-connected systems, particularly in targeting and directing kamikaze drones. In other words, what was cut was not just an internet line, it was a growing habit on the field. When that habit is broken, the tempo on the front line also slows down. The recent decrease in the intensity of conflict in some sectors is the practical result of this disconnection reflected on the ground. What follows is not a topic to be read under the heading of a technical problem at the front. If one side has connected the nervous system on the ground to an external infrastructure, it loses its reflexes when that infrastructure is shut down. The real question here is whether these reflexes will be regained, or whether communication at the front will now become a more fragile element. When communication breaks down at the front, the reflexes of the troops slow down. Orders arrive late, coordination breaks down, initiative diminishes. This is not just a problem experienced on the front line. The systems in the rear also bear the burden of this slowdown. The energy line hit in Belgorod should be read as a continuation of the communication breakdown on the front line reflected in the rear. On one side, the nervous system malfunctions. On the other, the circulatory system is suppressed. Ukrainian forces targeted the Belgorod thermal power plant, located near the city center in Russia's Belgorod region, and the 330/110 kilovolts Frunzenskaya substation on the southwestern periphery. The fact that the explosions were felt in the city and that electricity and heating were cut off in surrounding settlements shows that the strike not only hit a military target but also shut down the city's functioning arteries. The target here is not the building. It is the disruption of the flow from production to distribution. Achieving such a target is not done by forcing thick defensive belts towards the front line. Belgorod is located behind the border, so the density of defense is lower compared to the front. If these points were hit, the route was most likely chosen from peripheral corridors running parallel to the Ukrainian border, where air defense is not a priority. The goal is not to breach the defense, it is to pass unseen through gaps that the defense considers safe. In strikes against fixed targets, silence and timing are more decisive than speed. Timing is also read with this logic. Energy facilities are protected throughout the day, but moments arise toward nightfall when the human factor weakens. What the radar sees must be caught by humans. When attention wanes, reaction time increases. There is no need to rush because the target does not move. Therefore, such infrastructure strikes are carried out during the time intervals when the defense's reflexes are slowest. What is being done here is not catching something, but locking a node that you already know is there. Transformer stations are not military concrete targets. High-voltage transformers and switch yards standing in the open can be disabled even with a limited number of hits. Therefore, the mission of the munitions is not to destroy, but to stop operation. The fact that the transformer stations on the Belgorod line had previously come under pressure indicates that this route had been monitored for a long time and that defense habits had been read. If the same line is repeatedly probed, that line is considered secondary in terms of defense. The simultaneous targeting of the power plant and the transformer station is no coincidence. If the production point is the heart, the transformer is the main gateway for distribution. If one works and the other doesn't, the system still collapses. This simultaneous pressure is like locking the fuel line that supplies a tank rather than hitting the tank itself. When the power goes out, the city slows down. When the city slows down, the military background struggles to breathe. Repair crews, security, shipping, and logistics come under pressure all at once. The deeper impact of such strikes changes the behavior of the defense. You allocate units to protect the transformer station, and you allocate other units to protect the power plant. As the defense tries to be everywhere, it cannot achieve full intensity at any point. In the short term, this appears to be a minor disruption. Over time, it disrupts the rhythm of the defense. A system that is constantly on alert functions, but it does not function efficiently. Some days over the Zaporizhzhia line, the sky remains the same, but the threat in the air does not. Attack drones that had been hovering almost continuously over Ukrainian forces for some time have become less frequent in recent days. This decline did not happen overnight. It came with a break in the pattern on the ground. Russian forces had relied heavily on Starlink for attack drones and inter-unit data transmission. The integration of Starlink terminals into platforms such as the BM-36 kamikaze drones, as well as the Shahed and Molniya drones, increased the range and dwell time of these vehicles over their targets. As this integration increased, the operational order in the field became dependent on a single connection line. Towards the end of January, SpaceX implemented technical measures allowing only authorized terminals to operate in the Ukrainian field. With the whitelist application, terminals procured from the gray and black markets were pushed out of the network. In other words, what happened was not a coverage issue. It was a deliberate interruption of access. This decision produced two simultaneous results in the field. First, the tempo of Russian forces' command and control slowed. Observations from the field by the 118th, 65th, and 128th Brigades indicate noticeable disruptions in Russian communications and a decline in attack intensity in some sectors. The decline in FPV drone usage is a direct reflection of the weakening of real-time image transmission and guidance lines. The drone still flies, but its impact diminishes when the flow that directs it to the right target at the right time is disrupted. Second, the depth advantage established via Starlink narrowed. Attack profiles that previously extended deep into Ukraine were limited to areas closer to the front line when the connection was cut. That is why soldiers on the ground are using the phrase, "a little more breathing room." This respite does not mean the threat is over, it means the threat's reach has narrowed. The risk remains, but it has been brought into a more manageable framework. This disruption caused panic on the Russian side because the fundamental basis of the order established on the ground suddenly disappeared. A line that had been working smoothly for a long time came to be seen as natural infrastructure. With the whitelist, some terminals began to operate only with daily verification, shaking the troops' confidence in the devices on the ground. When trust is shaken, commanders act more cautiously. When caution increases, the pace of operations slows down. The Russian side still has other means of communication at its disposal. Therefore, the clashes did not stop. However, these alternatives do not fully match the speed and flexibility provided by Starlink. On the ground, this translates into delayed decisions, shorter operation windows, and narrower drone profiles. So the picture that emerges is not one of absolute collapse, rather, a subtle but noticeable shift in the balance on the ground. At this point, the connection to the previous two headings becomes clear. The energy arteries behind the front lines have been pressured, the communication line at the front has been weakened, and the threat in the air has been squeezed into a narrower area. When read together, these 3 points reveal that the comfortable working order on the ground is being dismantled piece by piece. Nights like this are not carried out to achieve a single goal. If hundreds of vehicles are launched into the sky at the same time, the goal is not to hit a single point. It is to wear down the defense and test its limits. This is exactly what happened in the skies over Ukraine on the night of February 6th. 328 attack UAVs were launched at the same time, accompanied by 2 Kinjal and 5 X-59/69 guided missiles. This means testing the question, how far can the defense hold, on the field, rather than, can we hit them? An attack on this scale is not carried out with a single wave logic. If hundreds of drones are coming from different directions at the same time, they are looking for gaps that the defense is not watching. An onslaught from the north distracts the batteries in the south, buying time for the targets in the center. That's why the attack lines spread across the north, south, east, and center axes. The goal was not so much to breach the defense as to force it to spread over a wide area. When the defense tries to cover everywhere, it cannot achieve full intensity anywhere. The variety of drone types also fits this logic. Platforms such as Shahed, Gerbera, and Atalma do not perform the same task. Some attract attention by making noise, some advance more quietly, and some are used as expendables to draw defensive fire. This is a blinding maneuver in the air. You engage the defense radar, ammunition, and human attention all at once. Meanwhile, the protection in front of more valuable missiles or the main targets is thinned out. It is no coincidence that missiles with hypersonic capabilities, such as the Kinjal, accompany this wave. Such missiles are difficult to intercept. They test the defense's reflex time and reaction chain. If the defense is forced to respond to this type of threat simultaneously, the attention it devotes to the drone wave is divided. The goal here is not the idea that a missile will definitely hit. It is to see how the defense behaves under simultaneous pressure. When the defense's response slows down, valuable data is obtained for subsequent waves. The fact that the Ukrainian side shot down or neutralized 297 UAVs shows that this attack did not produce the expected result on the ground. However, it would be incomplete to interpret this picture as a failed attack. This is because such large waves are carried out to measure the capacity of the defense rather than to cause immediate damage. Which areas' air defense responded faster? Which areas' electronic warfare was more effective? Which corridors did mobile teams arrive late to? All of these are raw material for the next plan. The cause and effect chain here is clear. When the initiative stalls on the front lines and certain arteries in the rear come under pressure, the counterattack usually comes from the sky. Airstrikes are the cheapest way to produce a wide impact in a short time. However, if the defense can systematically repel these waves, the attacking side is left with 2 options. Either risk more expensive ammunition more frequently, or escalate saturation attacks. Neither option is sustainable. Tonight, Ukraine's air defense did not just protect its targets, it also demonstrated on the ground how far the other side could push it. What will be decisive going forward is whether such waves become a habit. If every major attack meets the same response from the defense, the pressure tactic in the sky will eventually lose its deterrent effect. But if the defense begins to tire, at some point a small gap could lead to a major outcome. The breaking point here lies not in a single night, but in how many times these nights are repeated. The answer is still unclear. Can Russia truly wear down the defense with these saturation attacks, or does each wave strengthen the defense a little more? The breaking point lies in which side can sustain this tempo longer. Do you think these attacks signal a real shift in the balance on the ground, or are they short-term pressure tests? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue the discussion there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video to avoid missing out on this kind of clear and connected analysis. See you in the next analysis video. Have a great day, everyone.